Hi there and welcome to this week's vlog. I'm recording this at the time when the Women's Football European Championship has been played, and last night I was watching the semi-final match between England and Italy. Italy scored in the first half, and although England pressed and pressed, they were not getting any fortune in front of goal, and the 90 minutes was up and they went into added time. Just a few minutes left and England were pressing and eventually in about, I think it was, let me have a look, it was the 6th minute of added time, England managed to score a goal and equalise. Such a long time in coming, and I'm sure the fans who were there and those watching on telly were wondering, will this ever happen? How long do we have to wait for England to score? What if they don't score? They'll be out of the competition. Anyway, they scored in injury time, so extra time, and another 30 minutes was played. And again, it was just holding on and on with the score at 1-1 and looking as though it was going to penalties, which is a bit of a lottery at the best of times. And yet England finally did manage to score in the 119th minute, just shortly before the end of the match, which would have led to penalties. So England won the match, but as I say, there were, I'm sure, many fans watching wondering, are they ever going to score? They had many chances that they didn't take. I was reminded of a verse in the Psalms. In fact, it appears in more than one psalm, but particularly I mentioned Psalm 13, where David is writing this psalm and he's in a lot of trouble, and he cries out, "How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" I wonder if sometimes you felt that when you've prayed about something and God doesn't seem to answer, that heaven seems quiet and silent. I'm a volunteer with UCB, that's United Christian Broadcasters, on their prayer line ministry. So every week for a couple of hours I'm on the end of a phone, and people can ring prayer line and somebody will pray with them about whatever issue they need prayer for. All sorts of issues come up, but I notice that sometimes, and it's not an irregular occurrence, people are saying to me, "Look, I've prayed about this, I've asked God, and I've prayed for such a long time and God doesn't seem to be responding." And I just sometimes remind them of a verse in, I think, in Luke's Gospel. It's certainly in the Gospels, where we're told, Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. In other words, in our prayers, sometimes God may answer immediately. That's wonderful. But sometimes we need to persist in our prayers, to press on, not give up, but to keep going. I was in my Bible reading this week. It was mentioned a lady in the Old Testament in 1 Samuel called Hannah. Now, Hannah was a lady who was faithful to God, but she was in great despair because she'd not been able to have children with her husband, and in that society to have no children was a great disgrace, and so people made fun of her, they laughed at her, and she in desperation was crying out to God year after year for such a long time, and eventually God did answer her prayer. So in 1 Samuel chapter 1 you read the story of Hannah's despair. In 1 Samuel chapter 2 it's a great hymn of praise because God answered her prayer. But I'm sure that she really would have wanted God to answer her prayer much sooner than he did. I've been praying, as I think I mentioned last week, that we'd be able to sell our home because we're moving to another one. But although people have come and looked, nobody's decided that this is the one they want, and so we're still waiting and we're praying. But I'm not losing heart. I just believe that God will answer in his timing. There's a verse in another psalm, Psalm 27, which says, "Wait for the Lord, Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. And sometimes waiting is really tough, isn't it? It's like a child waiting for their birthday to come or for Christmas and getting their presents. Something we're looking forward to, we find it tough to wait. Sometimes we need to wait on God for his timing. For his timing is always perfect. To trust that God knows best. Not to give up, but to press on. To realise that God's timing can sometimes be different to ours. But he knows best always. So if you're praying for something, if you've been praying about something for somebody or someone, and God doesn't seem to be answering, God remains quiet, don't give up, but just press on. Believe that God is on your side. God knows best, and God will give in due course. He may even answer your prayer in a different way, but he will answer. Even if sometimes the answer is no, but we need to press on faithfully, trusting God. Isn't that wonderful that God is the sure foundation for our life? We can trust him with everything. So anyway, I'm looking forward now to the final of the Women's European Football Championship. England playing either Germany or France. Should be a good game. Trust God. I'm not saying trust God for that football match. I'm not sure if God's interested in football, but trust God with your life. Let me say finally that verse again, Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening today.